Hello, welcome. Today we are talking about what ChatGPT has to say. ChatGPT, am I saying that right? I keep getting it wrong. What they have to say about the housing market. And I asked some questions and got some answers. So we'll see how I think, if I agree with what ChatGPT has to say about the housing market today. So I'm Brittany Handura, real estate agent, coach, and investor, and I'm here with you every Thursday live at 3. So join me every Thursday, and I'll answer your questions. I'll react. I'll do whatever we can. And then, of course, every Tuesday at 9:30, I'm also live doing a real estate agent training. So join me there every Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. And if you're in SoCal, Oxnard area, come on in person with me. Okay, so let's talk about what does ChatGPT have to say. I'm going to share my screen, but I'm sharing it over on YouTube. So Instagram, if you're not over on YouTube, you're not going to see my screen, but you'll hear what I have to say. All right, so let me pull this up. I have to find it. I have so many tabs open. Why can't I find it? Oh my gosh, I have so much. Hold, please. What? Where is it? Is it on my other screen? No? Okay. Where are you? All right. How do I do this? I'm trying to share my screen. Here we go. I think this is it. No, that's just an icon. Okay. Hold on. Please hold. We're trying to share this, and I want you to hear. I don't know why. Here we go. Okay. All right. So I asked ChatGPT, what are the most common questions this week about how home buying, home selling? And I want to know the answers, what ChatGPT said. And so I am going to respond as a realtor. So number one, first question, I think this is a very common question. Is it better to rent or buy a home in 2025? ChatGPT says this depends on your financial situation, lifestyle goals, and local market conditions. Buying offers long-term equity and stability, while renting provides the flexibility and lower upfront costs. In 2025, with mortgage rates around 6.5%, and rising home prices, it's crucial to assess your readiness and consult with a financial advisor to determine the best option for you. So, of course, I agree with this. It's crucial to make sure that you are figuring out what is your financial situation, what are your goals, and does it make sense for you to buy? Because what's going to be worse than getting into a home that you can't afford, what's going to be worse than renting is getting into a home that you can't afford and potentially not being able to pay your bills or having it fall apart around you or whatever. Now, ultimately, obviously, I think home ownership is a great goal because home ownership naturally builds in that appreciation. So instead of paying rent, you're paying to yourself, essentially, like what everybody says. You're your own landlord. You can put that money that you would be spending anyway toward your mortgage. I do agree with that. But if you can't afford it, you're not going to want to end up, God forbid, foreclosing on your home. You don't want to get down into that position. So you want to make sure that you are really positioned well. And common financial knowledge says that your total mortgage payment, like everything, if you have an HOA, everything in total, your mortgage, property insurance, taxes, everything should be less than 30% of your income. Now, some people say take home, some people say that's your gross. In Southern California, I feel like you have to have a pretty high income to make that so that that's 30%. And if you do, awesome, love that. But remember, lenders will let you borrow sometimes up to 49% of your income of your gross income to be able to qualify for this loan. Well, that's really not a smart thing to do. You don't want to get up to the very top unless you have other income coming in, passive income, or you have, like your trust fund is giving you dividends. If that's the case, great, good on you. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. And so you do have to be really smart and really know if this is what you want to move forward with your goals, because so many of us have goals of buying a house, of, like having that appreciation, which that is the case. And if it's crumbling around you, it's not going to appreciate very much. But also keep in mind that even if you're not able to keep up with, you know, installing new windows or better floors or anything like that, it's still, the land is usually always going to continue appreciating. So even if you can't keep up with it, even if when you go to sell, you're not getting top dollar because you couldn't fix it up and make it into this nice modern oasis, you still are able to likely get more than what you paid. Now, of course, you have to talk to a real estate professional to make sure that you're making the best possible choice for yourself. But I'm just saying that in general, that's the case. In general, your house is going to appreciate. I always tell people, if you're planning to be in there for 3 to 5 years, you're pretty much going to net a gain. If you're planning on flipping something, if you're planning on only being there for a short time, like you would treat a rental, then it might not be the best move for you. So you really have to figure out what is your end goal and decide if now is the time to buy. Now, what I will tell you is that if you're looking right now, now is a great time to buy, because there are across the country and in my area too, there are people who are cutting their listings, or what am I trying to say? They're lowering the price of their listing. We're seeing a lot more price reductions. And so now is a great time to get a quote unquote deal. Now, for sellers, that might scare you a little bit, but if you've owned your house for more than, like, if you've bought it in 2020, you're going to have equity in that house. So you don't have to worry about that. But if you haven't owned it for that long, that's when you'll have to talk to a real estate professional to see if you have equity in it enough to sell and what your goals might be. So all in all, talk to a professional. If you don't have an agent that you're working with, let me know. Reach out to me. I'm happy to connect you with an agent. I work with great agents all across the country. All right, let's move on to number 2. What is the housing outlook for 2025? The housing market outlook for 2025. ChatGPT says the market is experiencing steady mortgage rates and a continued focus on suburban and rural areas. So basically, mostly everywhere. Well, I guess not urban areas, cities, big cities, and that kind of thing. Okay, anyway, let's continue. While home prices are rising, the pace has moderated compared to previous years. It's essential to stay informed about local trends and work with a knowledgeable real estate agent to navigate the current landscape. Well, of course, I agree with that last part. Got to work with a good agent. And I will say, as far as that goes, you definitely are looking at, we've talked about this before, where the secondary and tertiary markets are where there is still steady, steady buying and selling of houses. I don't know why I can't think of that word. There's still steady movement in the market. My in-laws work in as real estate agents in Bakersfield, and with it being a bit of a lower price point than where I am, they have steady business coming in because most people can afford a $300,000-$400,000 home. Well, where I am, where the average price is around 800,000, the average person can't just say, "Oh, sure, I can afford an $8,000 home." The average person is going to have to save up for a long time and get everything in order to be able to buy that $800,000 home. Because remember, when you're thinking of putting 20% down, well, 20% of 800,000 is what, 160,000? That's a good chunk of change. Most of the time, that usually comes from somebody selling a house and then moving up. but 800,000 is the average quote starter home in my area. And so, but if you're in an area that has lower prices like Bakersfield, then you have a starter home being 300,000, and now 20% down from 300,000 is, what is that? 60,000. It's a little more doable. Now, of course, keep in mind that you don't have to put 20% down. That is a fallacy that a lot of people think you have to put 20% down. The reason people think you have to put 20% down is because that gets you that removes your PMI, your private mortgage insurance, or MIP. Some people call it different things, but essentially that's what it is. It removes the insurance that the loan puts on the insurance that the lender puts on the loan. You're paying for that. And so once you get to 20% or 80/20 loan to value, that's when that goes away, or you can ask for that to go away. But you don't have to put that much down. You can put as little as 3.5% down, 5%, depending on the loan product you get. And in some ways, you can even get a first-time housing benefit, first-time buyer benefit, and not have to put anything down. So it just really depends. This is why you have to talk to a professional. This is why you have to see, all of that kind of stuff. This is why we need to make sure that we are talking to professionals and getting good advice, because in different areas, there are different loan products. In different parts of the country, there are different loan products. For different buyers, there are different loan products. And so you really have to be figuring out what is going to work best for you in your situation. But in a lot of areas, they have these first-time home buyer programs. So take advantage of that. But of course, you have to remember, the lower amount that you put down, the higher your mortgage is going to be, the higher the interest rate is going to be, the higher your mortgage insurance is going to be, the higher everything is going to be. So that's why a lot of people tend to like to put a higher amount down, because then everything drops. So even if you're looking at, the average mortgage interest rate today, I think is around 6.8, I think it is today. Whatever it is, even if it's 6.5, let's just call it. If you're not putting very much down, then that interest rate goes up, because the less you put down, the more volatile the loan is, the less secure the loan is for the bank. So they're going to charge you more. So that's why we can't say like it's cut and dry. This is how much it is. This is how much you're going to pay. Every single person is different. If you have a different loan product, if you have a different credit score, if you are a VA buyer, it's all different. And so it really depends on your actual situation. Okay, so let's get back to what this question was. What is the housing market outlook? So remember, the answer they said is the market is experiencing steady mortgage rates and continued focus on suburban and rural areas. So the steady mortgage rates are really, remember, a year ago, they were around 7.2. Now they're around 6.8. If you talk to somebody who refied in 2021 or bought their house in 2020 and they have a 2 or 3% interest rate, they're like, 6%, this is crazy. But if you have been a buyer sitting on the sideline and waiting for something to come down, and it hasn't come down for 2 years now, you're starting to say, hey, 6%, 6.5%, that's starting to look really good, because it's better than 7.5%. And so those people, that normalizing steady mortgage interest rate is making it so that more buyers are coming to the market. And remember that if interest rates drop, more buyers are going to flood the market, and then housing prices are going to go up, potentially pricing home buyers out of the area that they actually wanted to be in. So you have to remember the pros and cons of all of this. It really is important that you understand your local market and that you're working with a professional in your local market. So home prices are continuing to rise. We will likely see that, even though we're seeing some price reductions, the overall housing market is growing and is still going up. Now, it's not going up as fast as it was going, because remember, in 2020, 2021, even into 2022, the housing prices skyrocketed. And that is because we had very low interest rates. There were tons of buyers. And so that demand was there, and there were not as many sellers. Our housing supply is not outpacing demand. And so that demand, if there are lots of buyers, that demand is going to be really high. So housing prices shot up. So if you look at that and say, oh, well, housing prices aren't going as much up as much as back then, sure, the increase is slowing down, but that doesn't mean that it's not still continuing to go up. So before we might have seen a 10% increase year over year. Now we're seeing a 4% increase year over year. It's still going up. It still is going to be difficult the longer you wait. So if you're waiting on the sidelines, waiting for interest rates to go down or whatever it is that you're waiting on, you might be waiting a long time. And by the time you decide to jump in, you could have been paying that and riding the wave of your appreciation. And instead, you've been sitting on the sidelines and now you have to put even more down, and your mortgage price, your monthly mortgage might be even higher. So these are all things to consider when you're thinking about buying right now. What's the best thing? These are just my thoughts. So you take it how you will with a grain of salt. Okay, let's jump to the next question that I asked ChatGPT. What are the most common questions being asked right now this week about the housing market? And this is what it said. This is number 3. Can I use wedding gift money for a down payment? I thought this was kind of an interesting question because I love that people are getting wedding gift money enough for a down payment. Remember, in every economy, people are always getting married and having babies. So there's always a market for every kind of buyer. So the answer that ChatGPT said is yes, many newlyweds are now requesting cash gifts to assist with home down payments. In 2024, 48% of homeowners married within the past 2 years asked for financial assistance toward a home purchase. Proper documentation is required, including evidence of the wedding and deposit, to ensure the funds are accepted by the lenders. So there are always things that you can ask for. There are always things that you are. I didn't get lots of money for that, but hey, I love that some people are. And so if you're getting a huge lump sum, you absolutely can use that towards your down payment. That is something that a lot of people do, is they use gift funds from wherever. It doesn't matter. Their parents. We see a lot of times that parents take a little bit of money out of their equity and gift it to their kids to buy real estate. So that's something that you for sure can use toward your down payment. Okay, I have a couple of questions that I want to look at. Okay, so I have this question. I think we talked about this last week, but the question is, are there properties in Oxnard that make good short-term rentals that are not in an HOA? Also, can one be bought for $800,000? So lots of different questions there. Yes, there are homes without HOAs in Oxnard that can be bought for short-term rentals. Yes, there are homes around 800,000. It's really just dependent on how much work do you want to put into it? Are you looking to buy a fixer? It's also dependent on what kind of short-term rental do you want. If you're looking to buy by the beach, you're probably not going to find very much for around 800,000 unless it's a major, major fixer, which, hey, that might be good. There are a lot of properties around the beach that don't have HOAs, but you're still limited with the short-term rental regulations from the city and from the county. So you just have to keep those things in mind. But I love where your mind is at. I love thinking about short-term rentals and all of that kind of stuff. Any kind of vacation destination, beaches, if you're in like near a city, anything like that, if there's any kind of like fun stuff around you, there's going to be a market for short-term rentals. I'm even looking in Bakersfield, which I would say there's not much fun stuff there, but it's lower cost housing, and there are a lot of random things that happen in Bakersfield. My brother-in-law just went to a BMX race in Bakersfield where they rented an Airbnb to stay. because they had to be there for like 3 days. I had another friend whose son was a professional golfer, and she said that while he was like moving up the ranks, he had a lot of golf meets. I don't know what you would call it, golfing games, tournaments. I think that's it, tournaments in Bakersfield. So anyway, like there's in all kinds of different markets, you can find a short-term rental that potentially will work for you. You just have to look at the city regulations, the local regulations, because that's what really dictates how much you're going to be getting. And to do any kind of analysis, I like to use AirDNA because I think that it gives a fairly accurate picture of what houses, short-term rentals around your area are going to be going for. So, or around the area that you're looking at. So I recommend using that. All right, so we talked about using wedding gifts as a down payment. You can use any kind of gift funds. You just have to be prepared to track it for the lender. You have to be able to show exactly where it came from. Okay, let's look at the next one. What did ChatGPT say about the housing market this week? Okay, so one of the questions that people are asking is, what is an assumable mortgage and how can it help me? And ChatGPT says, an assumable mortgage allows a buyer to take over the seller's existing mortgage at its original interest rate. With current rates around 6.5%, assuming a lower rate mortgage can lead to significant savings. Approximately 12.5 million such mortgages exist nationwide, many with a sub 4% interest rate. However, the process can be complex, so working with professionals experienced in these transactions is advisable. Of course, I always agree with that. But one of the things that you have to remember with assumable mortgages is that it's only specific types of mortgages that would be assumable. So you can't just say, I like this house, let's assume their mortgage. No, they have to have an assumable type of mortgage, and then you have to qualify to be able to get that assumable mortgage. So if you can do that, I've seen transactions happen where people are getting a 4% interest rate because they've assumed that loan. But you also have to remember that you're only assuming the loan that they have. So if you're buying an $800,000 house and the original owner has a loan for $500,000, well, the $500,000 is where the assumable part comes in. So you're going to have a lower interest rate on the $500,000. But then for the $300,000, you're going to have however you finance that, that's going to be on the normal interest rate. So it's not just the full thing is assumable, but if you're talking about $500,000 with a 4% interest rate as opposed to a 7% interest rate, that's going to be some serious savings. So it's worth looking into if that's an option. A lot of times you can see that, like, agents will put that in the description that it's possible that it could be an assumable loan. So you just have to look into it and do some digging. But and like they said, it is a little more complex. So if you're in a situation where there's a lot of competition and you have more buyers who are there, it usually is at least a minimum of 45 days to close. And if you're up against a cash buyer, if you're up against somebody who's going to do it, more quickly, more easily, then an assumable loan is not as attractive as something else like that. So some things to consider. I'm actually surprised that that is one of the main questions that are being asked this week, because assumable loans were a big thing. We were talking a lot about it in my office like 6 months ago, and it really has kind of died down. So I'm surprised to see that that's coming up again. Number 5, this is a funny one to me. What is energy cleansing and why is it trending in real estate? Energy cleansing involves techniques like feng shui or shamanic rituals. Did I say that right? I think so. To remove negative energies from the property. The practice is gaining popularity among buyers of historic or newly built homes, as it can enhance the emotional connection to the space. Some real estate agents now recommend energy cleansing to help sell properties more effectively. Well, I have heard of this, but I've never seen it done. I've seen it on like Selling Sunset and those kind of shows. I've never seen it in real life. I kind of feel like what usually would happen is like somebody would move in and then they would like sage the place on their own, but they don't necessarily, like, I'm not bringing that in or calling for an energy cleanser, but I have seen it on TV shows. So I wonder if people are just seeing it on the TV shows and saying, hey, I want to do that too. I have no idea. But hey, you know what? If it works for you, makes you feel better, great. Because my personal opinion is that I absolutely would buy a house that somebody died in, assuming it was not like a violent death. And even then, who knows? I might do that. But my last place that I bought was a house that somebody had died in pretty recently. And the thing that I think about that is, like it just makes it so that I can get a better deal. So it doesn't bother me at all. It really is dependent on you and how you feel about it. But if you just want to bring some sage and feel better about it, then hey, great. Whatever works. I say if you're good with living in a house that somebody recently died in, then you're going to get a pretty good deal. The other thing I think, like, just that I want to note here as a caveat is that remember that the sellers are only required to what's the word? I'm like totally drawing a blank. I'm thinking disperse. That is the wrong word. Divulge, that's also the wrong word, but they only are required to tell you if somebody has died in the last 3 years. So if somebody hasn't died in the last 3 years, then you're not even going to know about it. So a lot of times, like in a historic home, I mean, if it's 100 years old, I'm sure a bunch of people have died in there over the years. So for me, I think it's not that big of a deal. If you walk in and you feel weird and icky, then don't buy it. But if you feel great, then hey, use it to your advantage. All right, what's the next one? Which home upgrades are worth it if I plan to sell soon? We just talked about this last week. Was it last week? I don't know. We talked about it recently. So let's see what ChatGPT says. For short-term stays, focus on is that what it's saying? Yes. For short-term stays, focus on cost-effective upgrades that enhance comfort and resale value, such as the kitchen and bathroom remodels, curb appeal enhancements, new paint, and updated flooring. Avoid major investments like installing pools or custom paint, as they may not recoup their cost and could deter potential buyers. So this is definitely something that I get that we talk about a lot is, like people are thinking that they want to do all these upgrades so that they can get the highest amount possible. And when you do cosmetic updates, yes, you usually can get a higher amount than if it's totally like builder grade, has never been updated, especially if it's really out of date. So if you have the same kitchen you've had since the 60s, updating that kitchen is probably going to get you a good amount back. But if you redo a backyard and spend $100,000 on it, you are not going to see that money. So what I usually tell people is, depending on how long you're going to be there, if you're not going to be there for very long, then do a minimal update. Just do fresh paint. And if things are in really bad shape, replace a vanity in a bathroom, that kind of thing. Reglazing a tub brings it back to life. In every house I've ever bought, I've reglazed the tub and it is amazing. Even in one of the houses I bought, I was like, this bathroom is disgusting. We're going to have to take it, like rip this whole thing out, new tile. We're going to have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on this. Well, in the short term, I was like, let's just reglaze it and see what happens. We reglazed it. It looked brand new. We didn't even end up touching it. So you really have to think about, like, where should you be spending the money? Anytime you do anything custom to a house, you really want to make sure that you're going to be there to enjoy it. So if you do something that is only what you like to do, not really like what the masses like, then you have to make sure that you're going to enjoy it. It should not be something that is totally custom and you do it like that just because you like it, but you're planning to sell in 6 months. Don't do that. You're not going to get your money back, because remember, when you put your house on the market, you want it to be exposed to the masses. You want most people to walk in and say, wow, this looks great. I can picture and imagine my family living here. What you don't want is to say, oh, well, it only takes one. There's going to be that one buyer who's going to come and love this aesthetic. That's probably true. But what's going to happen in the meantime, waiting for that one buyer, is that because it doesn't sell quickly, you're going to have to reduce the price and reduce the price and reduce the price to the point where basically you're going to have to pay for the next buyer to completely remodel the whole thing. So you don't want to do that. If you're thinking of selling, make it a blank canvas as much as possible. Go into a model home and make it look as much like that as you can. And remember, a lot of times model homes are builder grade. They have some upgrades, but they don't have tons and tons. Well, sometimes they do have tons and tons of upgrades. So you know what I mean. Okay. I think we're almost done with, actually, I have no idea. Let's keep going. Okay. So we talked about which upgrades are worth it if I plan to sell soon. Okay. What credit score do I need to buy a home? This is a good question. I'm surprised this is number 7 on the list. I would think it would be a little higher, but let's see. Most loan programs require a FICO score of 620 or higher. Higher credit scores can lead to reduced down payments and more favorable interest rates. With those lower scores, Those with lower scores may need to provide a larger upfront amount or accept higher interest rates. So it really depends. I'm surprised to see 620 because that seems pretty low to me, a 620 FICO score. But I think what they're saying, I mean, they are saying this because this is what they said, is that they will accept a 620, but you are not going to get the most favorable rates with a lower credit score. Obviously, the higher, the better. So the higher your credit score, the lower your interest rates are going to be, which means that you don't have to put as much down. So when you put more money down, a higher percentage down, then your interest rates go down. Or if you have a high credit score, your interest rates can go down. Now, if you have both, then your interest rate is going to be at the lowest it can probably possibly be. But basically what the bank is looking for is to say, is this buyer going to pay the bills? Is this buyer credit worthy? Are they somebody that we want to loan hundreds of thousands of dollars to? And if the answer is yes, then they'll roll out the red carpet for you and they'll give you all kinds of great stuff. And if the answer is, ooh, maybe, they're going to do what they need to do to protect themselves, which means they're going to charge you more. That's essentially what it means. So you can get into a house with a credit score of 620, but I would not necessarily recommend it. What I would recommend, and I'm not a financial advisor, but what I would recommend is getting your credit score a little bit higher, building up that down payment before you buy a house. Because what you don't want is to get into a house that you can't afford the payments because they're so high, where you said, it's okay, I'm going to do it. I'll just take out loans. I'll just get more credit cards. That is a recipe for disaster. So build up your credit score, build up your savings, and then think about buying a home. Okay. So the next question that people are asking this week, home buyers and home sellers are asking this week, is what are the steps to buying a home? Okay, so I'm just going to read through this and I'll put my little 2 cents in as I go because we'll just see. Okay, so the home buying process typically involves number 1, financial preparation. Assess your finances and get pre-approved for a mortgage and set a budget. So that goes back to exactly what we were just saying. Make sure that you are setting a budget. Make sure that you know exactly what you are going to pay. When you talk to a lender, make sure that they spell out for you what is the final amount that I would be paying, even if it's an estimate, even if it's rough numbers. You have to figure out what is the final amount that I'll be paying and does this fit into my personal budget? I did this with my mom a while back. I was like, okay, she wanted to buy a house. And so we were looking at it. She found this house that she loved. We were looking at the numbers. And the reality was she was approved for the loan because she was approved for the loan. But when we actually looked at how much the loan was going to cost and did her budget with her, it was going to end up being like she wasn't even going to have money to like get her nails done. And I was like, this is not the life you want to lead. You want to make sure that you have enough money to live your life and enjoy your life the way you want it. So it just meant that she had to pass on that house. That was not the time or the house for her. And that's the reality of what we have to do. You have to figure out what is the type of house that I want and how much can I afford for my lifestyle. So sometimes that means that the area that you want to be in, or maybe the type of home that you want to be in, is not attainable for you right now. And that's okay. All that means is you need to pivot and say, okay, I can't afford a single family home. Let's get a townhouse. Let's get a condo. Something like that, that's going to be less expensive, but you're still going to be able to build that appreciation. Remember, especially in the more expensive areas, it really is a stair step approach. You can't look at it and say, well, I want to live in the area that I grew up in, and the average single family home there is now $1.5 million. And so I'm just going to go into massive debt and potentially foreclose just because I want to live there. Maybe you need to start smaller. Maybe you need to start half an hour away in some of those secondary markets. Maybe you need to go into a condo. Maybe you need to get a little bit of a fixer. Whatever that might be, you just have to figure out what is it that you can realistically afford while still living your life. Don't be cash poor. It's not fun. I mean, house poor. It's not fun. And home ownership, hopefully, should be fun for you. Buying and selling a house should be fun. I love it. Okay, let's keep going with this. So, number one, financial preparedness. Number two, finding a real estate agent. Choose an experienced agent who understands your needs. Make sure that you're talking with your agent and outlining exactly what your motivations are, what your goals are, what your next steps are, what your financial future you want to look like, all of those things, because that really paints a picture of what they're going to help you with. And remember, if you don't have a good real estate agent, reach out to me because I have agents all over the country that I can connect you with. All right, number three is going to be home search. Explore listings and attend open houses and identify potential properties. So I really like this, and a lot of people like this part of it, is like the home search. It's so fun. But the reality is that you don't want to get so locked into a specific home when you're just out kind of window shopping. What you want to do is look at the neighborhoods. You want to figure out what are the neighborhoods that you want to be in, what are the price points for those neighborhoods, what are the types of houses that you want and that you like. Because what's very likely I can't talk. My brain stopped working for a second. What's very likely the reality is that if you're just out looking and you haven't gotten pre-approved yet and you don't know where you are in that process and you don't know what's going on, the reality is it's going to take a while for you to get pre-approved. And depending on how quick that house sells, it might not be available by the time you get pre-approved. So it's always good and it's fun to go see open houses and to check out the neighborhoods and to see what you like. But don't get your heart set on something until you actually are starting this process. All right, let's keep this rolling. Okay, home search. Number four, making an offer. Work with your agent to make a competitive offer. And of course, when you're looking at this, you're really thinking through you're talking to your agent about what kind of offer should you be submitting. Now, of course, you're in the driver's seat, but your agent is there to advise you. Your agent is there to help you through this process. And so they're going to be able to tell you whether, hopefully, they're going to know whether there are other offers on this property, how competitive you need to be with the pricing. They're going to know your financial situation. So they're going to tell you this house is probably going to go for $20,000 over where you're comfortable. So where is that going to come in? Are you going to be okay with that? Is that fine? And, figure that out. Or maybe your agent can say, hey, this has been sitting on the market for a long time. They have had no offers. I think we can go in a little bit lower and get you a good deal. Or maybe what's happening right now is a lot of sellers, we talked about this last week, a lot of sellers are choosing to give a seller credit. And so if you are working with an agent and they tell you, hey, what if we offer full price, but we'll ask for a seller credit for closing costs? That's going to be less out of pocket for you initially. So there's all kinds of things you can do to be competitive with your offer, but you have to know what's going on, what's the general market, what's the local market, what's this house in particular. What's the deal with it? Has it been sitting on the market long? Is it new to the market and super popular? All of these things are really important to know. And so you have to just reach out to your agent, and they're the ones who can help you with that. What are we on? Number 5, home inspections. Conduct a thorough inspection to identify any issues. So this is something that a lot of times you're going to do a basic home inspection and a pest inspection to check for termites. We live in California. There are termites in every single house. So it doesn't matter what kind of house it is, you're probably going to find termites. And so that I always tell my clients, this is nothing to be worried about. It's just another point for our negotiation. So the home inspector is going to come and do a general home inspection. They're not a plumber. They're not an electrician. They're not a roofer. They're going to go and look at those things. And then they're going to let you know, hey, I noticed this, maybe like the toilet's not flushing right, or there's the sink has stuff coming up out of it, or the HVAC is not working properly, or whatever. And then you're going to be able to determine if you want to go and do additional inspections and get additional experts on this to say if this is actually what you want to do. The whole point of the inspection is for the buyer to see what's wrong with the property and decide if they want to move forward or not. And most of the time, this is where a secondary negotiation comes in. And so the agents are able to negotiate what we call requests for repairs or credits. And so a lot of times what happens is if you as the buyer are going in and saying, oh my gosh, this house has $20,000 worth of repairs needed, maybe you go and say, hey, I want you to fix all of these. Specifically, usually we say health and safety things are the most important to get fixed. And the seller can come back and say, nope, I'm not doing any of that. They can say, yep, we'll take care of all of that. Or they can say, let's meet in the middle somewhere. It's all a negotiation. So you can go back and forth. But you as a buyer have to decide, is this something I'm willing to walk away from? If the seller says, absolutely not, I'm not going to do $20,000 worth of repairs, is that something for you to walk away from this house from? Or is it something that you say, you know what, this house is good enough. I still want to take it as is, and that's going to be okay. So that's the whole purpose of the inspection. It's not to get a brand new house. It's not to get everything your heart's desire. It's not even to go deep looking at every single little thing. It's just a basic home inspection. And then if they say, hey, go dig a little deeper in here, that's when you can decide if you want to do that or not. But the whole goal of the home inspection is for you to figure out, knowing what you know about the home, do you still want to buy it? Number 6, closing. Finalize the purchase and complete all necessary paperwork. So that's obviously easy. The process can take approximately 10 to 12 weeks from start to finish. 10 to 12 weeks is 3 months, 2.5, 3 months. That seems pretty long. Most transactions, well, I guess they're saying from your financial preparedness to finding an agent to your home search. I guess that's true, because what you have to think about is most transactions take about 30 days. Sometimes they can be a little shorter. Sometimes they can be a little longer, just depending on your situation. But a lot of times that is pretty standard, is a 30-day transaction. So anything that you add before that, like you're trying to get your financials worked out, you're getting your lender, you're getting your agent, all of that kind of stuff, that's all going to add on to that. But once you're serious about finding a property in this market right now, there are an increased number of listings hitting the market, meaning that you're going to find a property that I should say you're going to more easily find a property that you like than maybe a year ago because there weren't as many listings a year ago. So, I guess 10 to 12 weeks is pretty standard. So once you say, okay, I'm ready to buy a house. If you're like extremely particular, then it might take you a little longer. Just keep that in mind that it's not standard that it's 10 to 12 weeks, but pretty standard is between 21 and 45-day close. If it's cash, it can be sooner. Sometimes, like if you did an assumable loan or something like that, it could take a little longer. Okay. Oh, just a couple more. So, when is the best time to sell my home? ChatGPT says spring and summer are generally considered peak selling seasons due to increased buyer activity. However, local market conditions can vary, so it's essential to consult with a real estate professional familiar with your area to determine the optimal time to list your property. And of course, I say I agree with that. Consult with an agent. You want to make sure that you're consulting with a professional in your area. Now, what I will say is in our area, because we live in Southern California, we don't have these crazy seasons, but it still is spring and summer are the biggest selling times because even though we don't have the seasons that we have to deal with, like snow and all of that, I mean, in my area, there are some areas that do have snow, but because we don't have to deal with that, what we're still battling against are schools. Schools still are in session in August, September. And so a lot of times people want to make their move before that happens. They want to get their kids settled and comfortable with where they're going. And then they'll be able to, like be settled in their house. So they want to do that before August, September. We're also dealing with, once you get to the later months, holidays. Just because we don't have snow on the ground doesn't mean we don't have Christmas. And so we have to make sure that we're advising you properly. If you're a buyer or a seller, we want to make sure that we're advising you properly for when is the best time to sell. If you list your property November 15th, you're running into a lot of holidays. And usually what happens is the people who list their properties in November, December, the market knows that those people have to sell. That is a motivated seller. And so a lot of times a buyer is going to recognize that that's a motivated seller. And so they can come in with a lower price just because you are wanting to get rid of it. So keep that in mind when you are looking to list during that time. But otherwise, we do sell all year round, but the best times to sell are still generally spring and summer, always and forever. All right, number 10. Everybody's asking about a home inspection, apparently. What does a home inspection involve and why is it important? Well, we just talked about this. A home inspection provides insights into the condition of a property, identifying potential issues that might affect its value or saleability. For sellers, it can inform necessary repairs or pricing strategies. For buyers, it ensures transparency and aids in making informed decisions. So just like I said, this is really for the purpose of the buyer to say, okay, do I want to move forward with this transaction now knowing what I know? Now, a lot of times what I like to do is I like to get a home inspection even before we put it on the market, because what we don't want huge surprises where they're going to come back and say, well, we want a price reduction of $100,000 because we didn't know that all of this was wrong. The best thing to be able to do is be able to hand somebody a home inspection, a buyer's agent, and say, okay, make your offer based on this. So now you know there's full transparency. You know what you're getting. And what is nice about this is it makes it so there's basically one point of negotiation. And from that moment, you know what you're going to close at. Usually what happens if you don't have a home inspection up front is that the buyer is just saying, well, based on what we see, based on what we know, we'll offer X. But then you get into the inspections, the repairs, all of that kind of stuff. And now you're saying, well, no. Now I want to renegotiate. Now knowing what I know, I wouldn't have offered that. Now I want $20,000 off. I want $50,000 credit. I want you to fix all these things. So you really, it is beneficial to get a home inspection before you go on the market. And sometimes people don't want to do that for whatever reason. So it really just depends on what your personal situation is. Okay, so that is everything from ChatGPT. So I love to do this every week. I love to come on, react to ChatGPT, see what ChatGPT says. And then because nobody asked, I want you to know what I think. So I am here every Thursday at 3 p.m. Also, for real estate agents, I do trainings every Tuesday live at 9:30 a.m. So if you're in the Oxnard area, come and join me in person. If not, go to the link in my bio or the link below and sign up for the trainings. Be there live, get your questions answered. I do all kinds of trainings with agents, and I am here every single week. So until next time, I will see you. I will see you soon. Well, I'll see you either on Tuesday or on Thursday. Bye.